In this lesson, titled Page Layout View, we're in Workbook Lesson 06, Prep for Printing, and we're currently on Worksheet tab, Page Layout View. In Excel, often a time will come when you'll need to print one of your worksheets, and this offers some opportunities as well as some problems. Excel has a lot of tools to help you in printing. One of your major problems is that Excel worksheets are considerably larger than a regular sheet of paper. When you work in an application like Microsoft Word, it's not so much an issue because the screen you're working on is actually divided up into regular sized pages by default. But that's not true with Microsoft Excel. As you know, you get some 16,000 columns and 1 million rows. So it can seem a bit challenging at first to figure out how we're going to print out our worksheet. Let's take a look at our print preview to see what this worksheet will look like right now. First of all, we can see that we have quite a few rows of data. Let's go to the very end to see how far down that is. In previous lessons, we learned that we can use Control down arrow to go to the bottom of our data. That takes us to row 742. Let's do Control Home to take us to the A1 position. Control Home. So we have a lot of data that way. And let's see what we have off to the right. How many columns do we have? Let's hit Control right arrow, and that takes us to the end of that data set. Control right arrow takes us to our new data set. I'm going to hit Control right arrow a few more times. And one more time takes me to the very end, about 16,000 rows. So I'm going to do Control Home to bring me back. Pretty much we can see all the columns to the right. We go all the way over to our S column, and we go all the way down to 742 rows. So why don't we take a look now at our page print preview. We can do that simply by hitting Control P, or you can go do File Print. I'm going to do Control P. And here's our preview. This is really great feature to actually show us what our page will look like when we print. And we can see some interesting things here. One, we can see that we have a header automatically placed there for us. It says Page Layout View. I happen to know that that's the name of the tab, so the tab name has been put into our header. We also have a footer. It says Page 1, so that information is there. I can also see that I have some pretty good margins. These look like standard margins, if not a little bigger. And I can also see how many columns is able to print on this piece of paper. And I can get all the way to compensation. I can't see what the column letter is, but I can see this column header says composition. And I can see my rows coming down. I clearly don't have all 742, but I can see that I get down to Benjamin Shepherd. So why don't we go back? I can hit the escape key or the back arrow. I'm going to hit the back arrow. So I can see here about how far I was able to print down this way. Somewhere here in the B's, right? And off to the right, if you remember, it was composition. So I was being cut off right here. So the comp rating wasn't shown, and age and release date and all of this data over here. So none of this data over here was printing. So that gives us an idea about how we can go back and forth and kind of see what's going to print and what's not. Let's go back again now that we know that. This time I'm going to go to File and Print. So we'd like to get probably one more column here. And I don't think we want our print much smaller. I don't think we want to try to get too many more rows here. So let's go back. So you'll find yourself going back and forth quite a bit as you're getting ready to print. Because of that, it might be a good idea to add the print preview to our quick access toolbar. So I'm going to click here on the little drop down arrow and add print preview and print. There's also quick print, but that will literally start printing your document the moment you hit that button. So we probably don't want that one there. at least not yet. So here's my print preview so we can go back and forth. Well, we know that we want to probably add comp rating, but here I have age, column, and release, and all of this information over here. Actually, I don't want to print that. So I'd like to just print all the way over here to the end of G, but H and on I don't want to print. So there's something we can take into account as we work with our margins and other things. So now let's look at some controls that can actually help us when we print. We have our Page Layout tab, and Page Layout is really all about printing. It's how our page is laid out and therefore how it prints. We can see here we have quite a few options: margins, orientation, page size, and some other things that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Well, since we kind of already know what we want to print, we might start with margins. So I'm going to click on margins, and I can see here that I have some choices: normal, wide, narrow. If I went with narrow margins, would that solve my problem? Let's take a look. Let's go to Print Preview. And yes, it does. In fact, not only now does it have comp rating, it also, however, has a column that I do not want. But that was useful to be able to put in narrow margins. So let's take a look back here. We can also control print area. So this could be quite useful. The way print area works is you actually select what you want to print, and then you can simply hit print area and set print area. So that will actually give us this area right here that it's going to print. So we can see that by again going to our print preview, and now I have just the area I want to print. The problem is it's only one page because only the area I highlighted will print. So we've lost everything under Asia bar. It's all lost here. We only have page 1 will print. So it's quite literally just that area. I'm going to hit the back arrow here, and let's take a look at print area, and I'm going to say clear print area. Let's get rid of that. I could do something like this and then select that all the way down to the very bottom. So I could do something like Control Shift down arrow. So as you know, Control down arrow will take me to the bottom, but Control Shift down arrow, adding the shift, also makes a selection as it goes to the bottom of my data. The great thing about Control and arrows is it stops at the end of your data. It doesn't go to the very bottom unless you do it one more time. So now we could go to Print Preview, and you can see I have 31 pages, and I can click down here in the bottom and look at all of those pages. Very good. And I still have these header, footers. I still have narrow margins. And because of that narrow margins, it wants to add some extra data, so it was still giving me some trouble there. I wonder if I could go back to my regular margins. So let's come back here, margins, and I'm going to go to normal and back to print. So I've pretty much done it now. This is kind of what I wanted. However, there's some other things I'd like to change, and that includes header and footer and a few other things. So for instance, when I go to say page 3, you'll notice I no longer have any of the headers on the top of my columns. So we can't quite see what this information's about, or what this information is about, or what are these dates, right? Because I don't have headers except for on page 1. Now, to move through your pages, you can use the scroll bar all the way to the right, and you can scroll that up and down. You can use the scroll bar on your mouse and just scroll up and down. And of course, what I used before is these arrows over here. So I'm going to click a few times, go back here, and let's go back again. Well, we're still in page layout and looking at different things we can do for getting ready for print. We do have a feature here called Print Titles. So I'm going to click on Print Titles, and this takes us immediately to our Sheet tab. We have quite a few options under Page Setup. But under Sheet tab and Print Titles, and that's why it took us here, because we clicked on the Print Titles. And right here it's asking rows to repeat at top, right? Rows to repeat at top. So if I scroll to the very top, you can see, however, that I'm not on the top row. I'm at 508. I can scroll with my mouse, but the Control up arrow won't work with this dialog box open. So I can just grab the scroll bar over here, and I pull myself to the top. So I've selected this box that says rows to repeat at top. I'm going to come over here and just click on 1, on row 1. And when I do that, it puts in 1:1. So I'm going to say OK. But instead of hitting OK, do you see here where it says Print Preview? So a little shortcut to get us back. So this was all about printing tiles. So I'm going to click and look. OK, page 1 of 51. There's my title. Let's go to page 2. And my titles are still there. So this feature could probably get you a raise at work. It's an extremely popular feature once you know how to use it. It's very useful. So let's go back. But now I'm also thinking I would like to change my headers and my footers. Really easy way to get to that is simply to go down here, the very bottom. We have something that's called Page Layout View. It's the center one, little icon here, Page Layout View. And you might be thinking, I am in Page Layout View because I'm on the Page Layout tab. Well, you'll see that the view is quite different. So let's scroll to the top. I'm almost at the very bottom of this. Let's scroll to the top. And you'll see that this view is really quite different. See how large our headers are for rows and columns. And we also have a ruler here, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. But most interesting for us is we now have an interactive header. So right here is the printing header, and it's interactive. I can click here and change that to anything I want, and it's in 3 parts, to the right, center, and to the left. And each one of these actually uses a command that tells it what to print. So right here the command is and symbol and tab in brackets. That's why when I click away it says Page Layout View, because that's the name of the Sheet tab. It's giving me the name of the Sheet tab. So I'm going to click here and I can simply erase that. I'm just going to use my backspace and I can type anything I want. This could be called My Report 2018. And if I click away, I can see that's what it's called now, right? Or I could erase that, and in the Design tab up above here, I can click on my Design tab. I could insert any of this information. Page number, number of pages, current date, current time, path, file name, sheet name, that's what we had earlier. I could even insert images. So if I went here to the file name, and it says now the and sign and file in brackets. If I click away, it's now the name of the file, the name of the workbook. So this is quite useful. I'm going to come back to my report. Now over here we want to put in page numbers. So that's as easy as simply clicking on page number. And it'll put the current page number right there. Over here, maybe we want the date. I can click over here and just put in current date. And I get the code for current date. And again, when I click out of that section, it's going to show me what's going to actually print. Well, now I want to make some changes to the footer. If you look up here in the Design tab, you'll see it says Go to Footer. Go to Header has been grayed out because I'm currently in the header. So I'm going to click Go to Footer. And it's taking me to the bottom of that first page. And you can see here page 2 is already saying page 2, my report and the date. And down here I could put in maybe confidential. Now you probably might want that at the top, but we're just making a point here. And I click away, you can see that's accepted that. So let's go back to page preview now. And I want to show you an error some people run into, and they come up here and they cannot get to page preview. And the problem is you're still editing. This box is still active. So you need to click out of that so you're not editing a header or footer, and then all of your commands are available again. So I'm going to go to my page preview, and I have my header the way I want it and my footer, and I have all the columns that I want. So that's kind of a brief review of what we can do with our page layout tab, and also working in page layout view down here at the very bottom. To get back to normal, you simply need to click back on your normal view and you'll be back here in normal.